Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Kognito Key. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. If you're looking to master database management systems, well, you've come to the exact right place. Today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental building blocks of database design, entity sets. Let's dive right in. Here's a super quick look at our agenda for today's explainer. First up, we'll define what an entity actually is. Second, we'll explore entity sets. And finally, we'll break down the two major classifications, strong entity sets and weak entity sets.
Let's kick things off with Section 1. What exactly is an entity? This concept is truly the absolute foundation of any database.
Simply put, an entity is a distinct object in the actual real world. Think of a car, a bank account, or even a person. In a database, we represent this entity using a specific set of attributes, which becomes a single row or record in a table. It's those unique values that make the entity completely distinct from everything else around it.
Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine we have a group of students. Each individual student is a completely separate entity. So how do we tell one apart from the other? Well, by their attributes. Things like their name, roll number, and course. Take Steve, for instance, with roll number CS08, studying computer science. Those specific attributes come together to make Steve a distinctly identifiable entity.
Now that we've got a great grasp on what a single entity is, let's move right into Section 2, understanding entity sets and how we group this data together.
An entity set is really just a group or a collection of entities that possess the exact same set of attributes. But here is the absolute crucial part. Each entity in that set holds its own distinct values for those attributes. This guarantees that no two entities in your entire set will ever be exactly alike. Every single entity remains distinct and identifiable.
So, how do we visualize these sets? Well, in a relational database, an entity set is simply represented as a table, just like our student example. And when you're drawing entity relationship diagrams or ER diagrams, it's shown as a rectangle. But please keep this important rule in mind for your designs. Individual entities or instances are never drawn in an ER diagram. The diagram maps the overall structure, not the individual pieces of data.
All right, let's look at how we classify these sets, starting with Section 3, strong entity sets, which handle our independent data.
A strong entity set, which you might also hear called a regular entity, stands completely on its own 2 feet. Why? Because it possesses a primary key that is powerful enough to uniquely identify every single entity within that set. In your ER diagrams, you'll draw this as a standard rectangle, and you'll underline that primary key with a solid line. This amazing independence is exactly what makes our databases robust and easily searchable.
But what happens when the data just cannot stand on its own? Let's shift our focus to Section 4, weak entity sets, are dependent data. Let's compare the two. A strong entity set has a primary key and exists totally independently. A weak entity set, on the other hand, absolutely lacks a primary key. It simply cannot uniquely identify its entities without some outside help. Because of this, it is entirely existence-dependent on a strong entity just to survive in the database. Now, this critical dependency creates something very special called an identifying relationship. It is a many-to-one relationship that links many weak entities to one particular strong entity. And when you are sketching this out in your ER diagrams, you get to represent this identifying relationship beautifully with a double diamond.
So, you're probably wondering, how does a weak entity ever actually get identified? It uses a really clever 3-step formula. First, it takes its own partial key. These are attributes like a section ID, year, or semester, which are underlined with a dashed line in your diagrams. Second, it adds the primary key borrowed from its identifying strong entity, like a course ID. And the result? When you combine those two pieces, the weak entity finally gets its full, unique primary key. And there you have it. You now know the absolute essentials of entities, entity sets, and their strong and weak classifications. Keeping all these concepts in mind, how will you design your next database entity? Thank you so much for learning with me today. If you found this explainer helpful, please hit that subscribe button to join Kognito Key, and make sure to like and share this explainer with your friends and colleagues. See you next time.